Eleanor Hayes pushed through the hospital corridor doors without slowing down. She had the flowers in one arm, a gift bag swinging from the other, and a hand-knitted blanket folded over her shoulder that had taken her 11 weeks to finish. Pale yellow with tiny white daisies at the border. She had started it the night Brianna called to say she was pregnant, sitting in the kitchen with the phone tucked against her ear and her hands already reaching for the yarn. Room 214. She had memorized the number the moment the text came through. She knocked once and pushed the door open. The room was beautiful. Soft lighting, white roses arranged on the windowsill. A private suite that probably cost more per night than Eleanor made in a week. Damien stood near the window in a slim charcoal blazer, phone in hand. A woman Eleanor vaguely recognized, Victoria Sinclair, one of Brianna's new friends, sat in a velvet chair near the corner, her legs crossed, her expression the kind of neutral that was never actually neutral. And there was Brianna, sitting up in the bed, hair done, makeup on, Lily wrapped in a white organic cotton swaddle against her chest. Eleanor's heart cracked open in the best possible way. "She's here," Eleanor breathed.
She is absolutely
she's
beautiful.
perfect.
Thank you.
She
I'm
crossed
glad
the
you could
room
make it.
and reached out both arms, the blanket already slipping from her shoulder onto the bed. Actually, Brianna's voice was quiet but firm. "Mom, can you not right now?" Eleanor stopped. "We're trying to keep the atmosphere calm," Brianna said, not quite meeting her eyes. She just settled. Eleanor looked at the baby. Lily was wide awake, blinking slowly at the ceiling. "I just want to hold her for a minute, sweetheart. That's all. I drove 2 hours." Victoria shifted in her chair. "Some babies are very sensitive to energy," she said pleasantly, the way a person says something cruel when they want to seem like they aren't. Damien still hadn't looked up from his phone. Eleanor stood there with flowers in her arms and a handmade blanket on the bed and her daughter looking past her at nothing. And she understood in that moment that she had been allowed into this room, but she had not been invited. "Okay," she said finally, because what else was there to say? "Okay." She set the flowers on the table. She left the blanket on the bed. She kissed Brianna on the forehead, said goodbye to a room that didn't answer, and walked back out into the corridor. She made it to the elevator before her eyes blurred. The doors closed and she stood alone in that small steel box and thought, when did my daughter become ashamed of me? If you are new here, welcome. If you have been watching for a while, you already know that these stories go somewhere. So hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from today. Now let's go back to the beginning because this story did not start in that hospital room. It started the year Eleanor's husband died. Robert Hayes collapsed at his desk on a Tuesday afternoon in March. Brianna was 9 years old. She was at school when it happened, drawing a picture of their house for an art project. Yellow walls, red door, a dog they did not own but she had always wanted. Eleanor got the call at work. She drove to the hospital and sat in a waiting room for 4 hours before a doctor came out and told her what she already knew. She cried for 3 days. And then she got up, because Brianna needed her to get up. Eleanor had worked for a small architecture firm before Robert died. She had talent, everyone said so, but she had always let his salary carry the weight while hers was extra. After he was gone, there was no extra. There was only what she could build. She started Hayes Design Group in the spare bedroom of their house with a second-hand drafting table and a laptop that froze every time she had more than 4 windows open. She worked early mornings before Brianna woke up and late nights after she went to sleep. She took every client she could find. She delivered work no one could argue with. By the time Brianna was in high school, Hayes Design Group had a real office and 4 employees. By the time Brianna graduated college, it had 20. Brianna used to bring her mother coffee at 11 o'clock at night and sit on the edge of the desk and say, "You're going to be famous, Mom, and when you are, I'm going to tell everyone I was here the whole time." Eleanor would laugh and say she didn't need famous. She just needed the Hendersons to pay their invoice. Those were good years. Hard but good. The kind of years that make a person. The kind of years Brianna seemed to have forgotten. Damien Cross came into the picture at a charity gala Brianna attended through her firm. Eleanor heard about him before she met him. Successful, Brianna said. Self-made. Sophisticated. He had import-export connections across 3 continents and a condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and a car Eleanor couldn't have named if she tried. When Eleanor finally met him at a dinner Brianna arranged, she liked him well enough. He was charming. He asked her thoughtful questions. He complimented the salmon. She noticed he talked about money the way some people talk about oxygen, like it was simply the medium everything existed inside of. But she told herself that was just his world. People came from different worlds. What Eleanor did not notice right away was the way he listened when Brianna described her childhood. The way something shifted behind his eyes when Brianna mentioned the drafting table in the spare bedroom, or the years when new shoes were a planned purchase, or the summer they skipped vacation because a client fell through. He did not say anything unkind. He never had to. Within 8 months of meeting Damien, Brianna had stopped wearing the blazers she used to love and started wearing labels Eleanor didn't recognize. She had started referring to her own childhood as humble, in a tone that made it sound like a diagnosis. She had started calling Eleanor less, visiting less, and when they were together, there was a new habit Brianna had developed of looking at Eleanor's clothes or her kitchen or her car with an expression that wasn't quite embarrassment but wasn't quite not. "You should let me take you shopping," Brianna said once. "You have the money now. You don't have to dress like that." Eleanor looked down at her blouse. "Like what?" Brianna just smiled the way a person smiles when they don't want to answer. Eleanor told herself it was a phase. That love survived phases. That Brianna would find her way back. And then came the hospital room. And then, 6 weeks after that, came Lauren Pierce. Lauren was a financial advisor Eleanor had worked with for years. Steady, careful, not the type to call without reason. When her name appeared on Eleanor's phone on a Wednesday morning, Eleanor answered on the first ring. "I need you to come in," Lauren said. "There are some transactions I can't explain, and I need you to look at them with me." Eleanor sat across from Lauren's desk 2 hours later and looked at a spreadsheet she did not fully understand but understood enough. Transfers she hadn't authorized. Withdrawals from accounts she rarely touched. 2 loans taken against a property she owned outright. The signatures on the documentation not quite right in a way Eleanor felt in her chest before she could articulate it with her eyes. "How long?" Eleanor asked. "The earliest one I've flagged is 14 months ago," Lauren said. "But I want to be careful. I want an investigator to look at all of it before we draw conclusions." Eleanor nodded. She was very calm. Later she would realize that the calm was shock wearing its quieter face. She hired the investigator. She hired the attorney, Michael Reed, who had an office on the 4th floor of a building downtown and a manner that was so unhurried it had the effect of making everyone around him slow down too. "Let them work," Michael told her. "And don't talk to anyone about this until we know exactly what we have." Eleanor went home and sat at the kitchen table and looked at the drafting table she still kept in the spare room and thought about every invoice she had ever stayed up late to deliver, every client she had chased, every vacation she had skipped, every year she had poured back into the business so that Brianna would never have to worry. The investigator's report came back 3 weeks later. The transfers traced to 2 accounts. One of them was connected to Damien. The other was connected to a name Eleanor didn't recognize. Natalie Pierce. Not Lauren Pierce, a different Pierce entirely. A woman who appeared in financial records and then disappeared from them, like a current that runs underground. Michael spread the documents across his desk and walked Eleanor through each one. Unauthorized access to her estate account. Luxury purchases, furniture, travel, clothing. Bill to a card attached to a line of credit Eleanor had not opened. Failed speculative investments Damien had made using leveraged funds that, when traced, looped back to money Eleanor had never agreed to move. "The forged signatures," Michael said, "are enough on their own." "What does that mean?" Eleanor asked. "It means we have options," he said. "And it means the first thing you do is freeze everything." She froze everything. Brianna called the same afternoon. "What did you do?" Her voice was not quite a yell, but it was in the neighborhood. "Damien can't access anything. Our accounts are flagged. We have a mortgage payment due next week." "I know," Eleanor said. "Mom, this is insane. Whatever you think happened." "Brianna." Eleanor's voice was steady. She had practiced being steady. "I need you to ask Damien to explain the transfers to you. All of them. Starting 14 months ago. Silence. What transfers? Ask him, Eleanor said. And then call me back. Brianna did not call back that day. Or the next. When she did call, 3 days later, her voice had changed. The anger had compressed into something harder and quieter, which Eleanor recognized as fear. He said it's complicated, Brianna said. I know it's complicated, Eleanor said. I have the documents. Damien called Eleanor directly that evening. He was smooth, measured, all reasonable explanation and misunderstanding and things taken out of context. He used the word technically 4 times in 6 minutes, and Eleanor counted because she had nothing else to do while she waited for him to finish. I have an attorney, she said when he stopped talking. His name is Michael Reed. You can have your attorney contact him. Damien's smoothness developed an edge. Eleanor, we're family. Yes, she said. We are. That's why I'm handling this properly instead of the other way. She hung up. Michael presented the full case 3 weeks later. Damien sat across the conference table with an attorney who kept asking for more time and never had anything new to say. The documents were not ambiguous. The signatures were not ambiguous. The money trail, which Michael had laid out in a sequence so clear a person could follow it like a map, was not ambiguous. Damien looked at the table for a long time. Then he looked at Brianna, who was sitting 2 chairs away, and Eleanor watched her daughter's face as she watched her husband not defend himself, not explain, not produce a single thing that contradicted what was in front of them. This was for us, Damien said finally. Everything I did was for our life. You forged my mother's signature, Brianna said. He didn't answer. He moved out of their apartment 11 days later. The friends who had filled their weekends, the Victorias and the rest of the curated social circle they had spent years maintaining, evaporated with a speed that would have been impressive if it weren't so predictable. Luxury lifestyle required the performance of success. Without the performance, no one stayed for the person underneath. Brianna was left in an apartment she could not afford alone, with a baby, with debt she hadn't known about, and with the slow, terrible work of understanding how long she had been looking at a mirror instead of a person. Eleanor gave her 3 months. Not 3 months of silence. She called. She dropped groceries off. She sat with Lily when Brianna needed sleep. But she did not fix it. She did not write a check. She let Brianna stand in the wreckage and make choices, and she stayed close enough to catch her but far enough back to let her carry her own weight. On a Sunday in October, Eleanor let herself into the small apartment with her spare key and found Brianna sitting at the kitchen table with Lily in her lap and a coffee going cold in front of her. Brianna looked up and something in her face was different. The performance was gone. The expensive posture and the careful image and the constant low-level vigilance of a woman managing how she appeared, all of it had dropped away. What was left was just her daughter, tired and human and real. I don't know when I stopped being myself, Brianna said. I didn't even feel it happening. I know, Eleanor said. She sat down across the table. The hospital. Brianna's voice broke at the edges. Mom, I had you standing there with flowers and that blanket you made and I let her say that to you. I didn't say anything. No, Eleanor said. You didn't. I'm sorry. And it wasn't the apology a person makes to end a conversation. It was the kind that cost something. I'm so sorry. I chose what I wanted to look like over the person I actually love. And I don't have an excuse for that. Eleanor reached across the table and put her hand over her daughter's. Then don't make one, she said. They sat there for a moment. Lily looked between them with the patient attention of a baby who has not yet learned that adults are complicated. Then Brianna stood, and she picked up her daughter, and she walked around the table, and she placed Lily into Eleanor's arms. Eleanor held her granddaughter for the first time. Lily grabbed Eleanor's finger with a grip that was absurdly strong for someone so small, and Eleanor laughed. And the laugh surprised her because it came from somewhere deep down where she had been keeping the grief of the last several months. And the two things mixed together into something that was neither quite sorrow nor quite joy but felt more honest than either one alone. If this story moved something in you, we would love to know. Leave a comment telling us what hit hardest, and while you are there, tell us where you are watching from. People from all over the world find these stories, and we never get tired of reading where you are. like this video if Eleanor deserved better, and subscribe if you want to be here for the next one. 1 year later, Eleanor drove to Brianna's new apartment, smaller than the old one, in a neighborhood that was honest about what it was, and carried a cake through the front door for Lily's first birthday. There were no designer labels in the room, no curated guests with curated smiles. There was Brianna's coworker from her new job, a woman named Dessa who laughed too loud and brought the wrong kind of candles and was perfect. There was Michael Reed, who had become something close to a family friend through the unlikely intimacy of crisis. There was Lauren Pierce, who had made the call that started all of it, and who held Lily with the confidence of someone who had always wanted grandchildren of her own. And there was Lily, 1 year old, with icing on her chin and no awareness whatsoever that she was the reason any of them were there. Eleanor sat in the corner with her granddaughter in her lap and watched Brianna move through the room laughing at something Dessa said, easy and unguarded, not performing anything for anyone. She thought about what it had cost to get here, the hospital room, the spreadsheet, the conference table, the months of keeping her hands open instead of closed. She thought about the drafting table in the spare room and the 11 o'clock coffees and the little girl who used to say, "I'll be here the whole time, Mom." She thought about how love, when it has no edges, becomes a place where other people's worst instincts can live without consequence. How the boundaries she should have drawn years earlier might have protected both of them. How Brianna had not become cruel because Eleanor failed her, but because no one, not even the people we raise, is exempt from the slow drift that happens when comfort meets the wrong kind of influence and there is nothing firm to push back against. And she thought about the moment in October when Brianna placed that baby into her arms, not as a gesture, not as a performance, but as the simplest and most complete apology one person can offer another. Here, this is what I trust you with most. Take her. Love isn't proven by what we sacrifice. It is proven by the truth we are willing to protect. Eleanor kissed the top of Lily's head. Lily grabbed a fistful of Eleanor's necklace and pulled. Eleanor laughed and let her. 3 generations in a small apartment with icing and bad candles and people who stayed because they wanted to. That was enough. That was everything.